The stars were never supposed to vanish. From the bridge of the horizon's edge, the void had always looked endless, a black ocean filled with silver lights. But tonight the stars were dying, one by one, like candles being blown out by something unseen. Engineer Eli Cross leaned over the console, his hands trembling as warning lights painted his face in red and amber. "That's not a system failure," he muttered. "That's real. The stars are actually disappearing," finished Commander Tereth, his four violet eyes narrowing. The tall alien's voice carried the deep, vibrating tone of his kind, the Vernathi. He turned toward Eli. "Human, is this one of your illusions, another weapon test?" Eli shook his head quickly. "No tricks, Commander. Humans can't make stars vanish." Outside the viewport, darkness spread like ink across the galaxy. It wasn't just absence of light. It was swallowing radio signals, heat, even gravity readings. The fleet, a combined force of over 60 ships from 7 species, had been on a peace patrol near the Veil, a mysterious border region where even sensors hesitated to look. Now their communications were dead. Their long-range scanners returned nothing but static, and then the screaming started. The sound didn't come from voices. It came through the hull, a vibration that made every bone in Eli's body hum with terror. He clutched the console as the deck shook violently. Somewhere in the darkness, something vast was moving. "Power fluctuation in the main drive," Eli shouted. "It's draining energy directly from the ship." "Impossible," barked Tereth, his crest flaring blue. "Nothing can feed on fusion output." But the impossible was happening. One by one, the ships of the joint fleet flickered out, their lights dimming, their engines silenced. The tactical holo on the bridge became a graveyard of vanishing signals. Eli's breath came fast. "Commander, we have to retreat." "The longer we stay, the more power it drains." Tereth hesitated. His people were warriors, proud and unbending. Retreat was shame. But the look in Eli's eyes, raw, desperate, and utterly human, made him pause. "Do it," he said at last. "Full burn, set course away from the Veil." The horizon's edge roared to life, engines screaming against the pull of the darkness. But the void followed. It wasn't space, Eli realized. It was alive. Something slammed into the ship, invisible but powerful enough to tear metal like paper. The hull screamed. Bulkheads collapsed. A wall of black fluid light swept through the corridors, and everything it touched turned silent and still. Eli yelled, "Go, go, go!" Tereth shoved him toward the escape bay. "Humans first, never." Eli grabbed his arm. "You'll die trying to be noble." "Move." They ran as the deck split beneath them. The emergency pods blasted free from the ship, streaking through the storm of dark tendrils that clawed at them from every angle. Eli could see other pods, tiny sparks of hope, disappearing as they were swallowed whole. The darkness didn't make sound anymore. It ate sound. The silence was worse than any scream. Eli's pod tumbled end over end, alarms flashing. "Stabilizers offline," said the AI voice flatly. "Surface impact in 20 seconds. He gritted his teeth. "Brace for crash, sweetheart." The pod slammed into a barren moon. The world outside was silver gray dust and jagged rock under a broken sky. The impact threw him forward. Smashing his head against the controls, he blacked out. When he woke, everything was quiet, too quiet. The console lights flickered weakly. His suit was damaged, oxygen low. He dragged himself out of the twisted pod, coughing, his ribs ached. But he was alive. Above him, the sky was wrong. The stars were still gone, a vast black wand across the heavens. He could see faint lights from other crash sites in the distance, maybe other survivors. But he could also see movement, a slow, shadowy ripple crawling along the ground like darkness pretending to have shape. He swallowed hard. Not alone then. A sound broke the silence. The low hiss of airlocks. He turned, raising his hand instinctively, and saw a group of figures emerging from the mist. Aliens, 4 of them. Their armor bore the same insignia, survivors from the joint fleet. He recognized their species, 2 reptilian Draz, 1 insectoid Kirtal, and another Varnathi, same as Commander Tereth, though smaller and leaner. They stared at him with open distrust. The tallest Draz hissed, its voice sharp. "A human. Of course, the fleet falls." And Eli raised his hands slowly. "Easy there. I'm an engineer. I can help us get off this rock." The insectoid clicked its mandibles. "Help. Your machines brought the darkness." He looked between them, their eyes filled with anger and fear. "We can argue later. Right now we need power, shelter, and communication. Unless you all breathe dust and eat rock." They hesitated. A female, judging by the softer crest, tilted her head. "He is right. Without energy we will freeze when the light fades." The Draz snarled. "You trust this fragile thing?" She stepped forward. "I trust survival." Eli took a breath. "Then let's start there." Together they dragged wreckage from nearby pods, setting up a rough camp in a shallow crater. The air was thin but breathable. Eli managed to reactivate a few portable lamps using the last of his suit's power. The faint white glow felt almost holy in the dark. As they worked, he caught the Varnathi's name Ranari, and the Draz brothers called Vec and Tor. The insectoid never gave a name, only clicking warnings when the sensors beeped faintly. Eli was trying to recalibrate a power cell when he noticed something strange. The lamps were dimming again. He tapped the panel. That's not a fault. Ranari looked up. What do you mean? The energy's being drained, same as before. A cold shiver passed through them all. The air itself seemed to hum faintly, a deep vibration that grew louder by the second. Eli looked out across the dark plain. There, far beyond their camp, the shadows were moving again, slow, deliberate, and closer this time. He whispered almost to himself. The stars went silent and it followed us. Eli didn't sleep that night. The others tried, huddled close to the fading lamps, their breathing rough and uneven, but his mind refused to rest. Every sound in the distance, every shift of gravel, every flicker of shadow felt alive. The ground itself seemed to hum with something slow and patient. He kept busy because busy meant sane. He moved from lamp to lamp, checking each connection, counting power cells, testing air recyclers. The readings were strange. The energy drain wasn't mechanical. It was like something sucked power through the very air. When the weak light of morning touched the horizon, the survivors stirred. Ranari was first, stretching her long limbs with quiet grace. The Draz brothers followed, their scales dull and cracked from the cold. The insectoid, still silent, scuttled out to scout the perimeter. Eli was already crouched beside the wreckage of a smaller pod, prying open a panel. If we can get the main power cell working, we'll have light and warmth for a few more days, he said. But this metal's fused shut from the crash. Vec, the larger of the Draz brothers, hissed. Your human ships are weak. Even our escape pods could have survived this impact. Eli didn't look up. Then maybe you should have let me borrow one before the fleet exploded. The Draz growled, but Ranari lifted a hand. Nuff, we are all that remain of the task force. Arguments waste breath. The insectoid returned, its antenna twitching rapidly. Movement near the ridges. It said in a high clicking tone. Shadows. Many. Ranari's eyes narrow. How far? Close. Eli stood. Then we move fast. They dragged the heavy power cell into the crater's center and began constructing a shelter from the twisted panels of their pods. The moonscape around them was endless gray stone, broken only by the dark line of distant cliffs. Above, the sky shimmered faintly, not with stars but with the same crawling black haze that had swallowed the fleet. Eli tried to keep his mind on the work. He could feel the distrust in every glance the others gave him. To them, humans were unpredictable, reckless, emotional, and dangerous. The alliance between species had been uneasy even before this disaster. Now, with fear spreading like poison, he could sense how thin their patience was. As he knelt to reconnect the core cables, Ranari crouched beside him. Your people, she said quietly. They built the first drives to cross the veil. Yes, yeah, Eli said, not looking up. We built them. And maybe that was our mistake. She studied him. Do you think this thing came from beyond it? Eli hesitated, remembering the way the darkness had eaten light itself. I don't know. But it acts like a living void. It feeds on power, on heat, on everything that makes life possible. Ranari's crest pulsed faintly, a sign of unease. You speak as if it has purpose. He met her eyes. Everything alive has purpose, even hunger. The power cell came online with a faint hum. The lamps brightened, pushing back the cold. The aliens murmured softly, maybe relief, maybe surprise that the human had actually done it. Good, Eli said, standing. We'll set a perimeter. Motion sensors, sound traps, anything to warn us if something comes too close. Vake snorted. You think noise will stop the dark? Not stop it, Eli replied. Just slow it down. Give us time to run. They worked for hours. By midday, a weak camp stood, half metal, half desperation. The air recyclers hissed quietly. Ranari tested the emergency beacon, but it only spat static, no signal, she said. The void interference grows stronger. Ali frowned. We'll boost the signal later. I'll try something else first. He took a small scanner from his belt, the kind used to detect energy leaks. The readings were strange again. Whenever he pointed it toward the cliffs, the signal dropped to zero. It was as if something there swallowed every frequency. He showed Ranari the results. See that flat line? It's like space itself is bending. Huvek glanced over. Human nonsense. Ranari ignored him. It could be where the creature hides. The lie nodded slowly. Yeah, or where it's coming from. Before he could say more, a loud crash echoed across the plain. Metal hitting stone. Everyone froze. "It's one of the pods," said the insectoid. Something moved it. They armed themselves with what little they had. Plasma cutters, a flare gun, and a half-dead rifle from the wreckage. Together they crept toward the sound, their lamps flickering weakly. As they reached the ridge they saw it, a pod half buried in dust, its door torn open. Inside lay one of the fleet's pilots, motionless. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt metal. Renari moved closer, scanning the body. "No wounds," she said softly. "No damage." Eli crouched beside her, checking the suit's readings. Power drained to 0. Even his neural implants, dead. The Draz brothers backed away, hissing. "It feeds," Tor whispered. "It feeds on life." Eli's hand trembled slightly as he closed the pilot's visor. "Then we'd better stop giving it food." A low vibration shivered through the ground, rising up through their boots. The lamps flickered again. The air grew cold, the kind of cold that feels wrong. Renari's voice barely rose above a whisper. "It knows we are here. Run," Eli said. They sprinted back toward the camp, the ground shaking under their feet. Behind them the shadows rippled like liquid night. For a moment Eli thought he saw a shape, massive, shifting, with too many limbs and eyes that weren't eyes at all, just holes in the light. The camp came into view, glowing like tiny stars in the dark. Eli dove behind a panel, slamming the emergency switch. The lights flared bright white. The darkness recoiled, screaming without sound, then retreated into the distance. They waited, hearts pounding, until the vibration faded. Vec's voice trembled. "We cannot fight this. We must flee the moon." Eli turned on him. "With what ship? The only one left is half buried and without power. If you want to survive, we fix it. Together." Renari looked at him, her eyes steady. "You think you can repair her?" Gaze. "I can try, but I'll need time, tools, and a miracle," Tor hissed. "Humans always speak of miracles." Eli smiled faintly, exhaustion etched into his face. "Yeah, because we keep making them when we shouldn't." That night, the survivors worked under the dim light of the flickering lamps. Each spark felt like defiance against the endless dark. Somewhere out there the creature waited, patient and hungry. But Eli Cross, human engineer, last of his crew, had already decided something simple. If the stars could go silent, then humanity would just have to make new ones. The next few days blurred together in a rhythm of fear, work, and silence. Eli barely remembered sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it, that deep vibration under the ground, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The creature was still out there, watching, waiting. He had one mission now: get the crashed ship working again. The only vessel with a chance of leaving this moon was buried half a kilometer away. A small Varnathi scout ship. It was cracked, its power core dead, and its main hull bent from the impact. But Eli saw something the others didn't. He saw a possibility. On the morning of the 4th day, he called the group together near the wreck. "All right," he said, voice hoarse from dust and lack of sleep. "Here's what we know: the main core's shot, but the secondary reactor still has intact conduits. If we can reroute power and build a new energy shield, we can restart the ship." Vec folded his arms. "And how do you plan to build a shield from junk, human?" Eli grinned faintly. "The same way we built fire in the rain, by refusing to quit." The Drash scowled, but Renari stepped forward. "If he says he can try, we help." So they did. They scavenged every working part from their crashed pod's wiring. Thermal converters and fusion cells. The insectoid, whose name they finally learned was Silac, proved useful, its many arms nimble and precise. Together they worked from dawn to dusk, piecing together something that barely looked like a ship but might with luck fly. Still, Ili couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air felt heavy, as if sound moved slower here, and sometimes when no one else was looking, he thought he saw faint shadows creeping closer to the edge of the light, shapes that melted away when he turned. That night, while the others rested, he sat outside the camp, staring at the flickering lamps. They were growing dim again. The power cells should have lasted twice as long. He reached into his tool pack and pulled out the scanner. The readings showed the same strange pattern, energy being drained in waves, always moving closer when the lamps weakened. It was like the darkness breathed. He muttered softly, "So that's how you hunt." Suddenly, the dust beside him stirred. Renari's shadow fell across his shoulder. "You should sleep," she said quietly. "Even humans must rest." Shook his head. "Sleep's not gonna fix this." She crouched beside him, her crest faintly glowing with concern. "You have not stopped working since we crashed. Your body will fail before your courage does." He gave her a tired smile. "That's kind of our thing." Renari studied him for a long moment, then asked, "Why do you push so hard? You could have left us. Saved only yourself." Eli stared out at the dark horizon. Because if I was alone, I'd already be dead. We survived together or not at all. For a while, neither spoke. Only the faint hum of the air recyclers filled the silence. Then, suddenly the ground trembled. The lamps flickered once, twice, and went out. Ranieri froze. It's here. Eli jumped to his feet, grabbing the flare gun. Back to the ship. Now, the shadows at the edge of the camp began to move. Slow at first, then faster, twisting into forms that weren't solid but wrong. They crawled up the rocks like smoke climbing underwater. Silik and the Draz brothers rushed to the defense perimeter, firing plasma cutters into the dark. The beams of light vanished on contact, swallowed by the black mist. Eli fired a flare high into the air. The red light burst and illuminated the plane for one brief, terrifying second, enough for him to see it. The creature was huge, not a single body, but many shapes fused together. Its skin was like oil and shadow, its face a hollow mask of shifting light. It had no eyes, yet Eli felt it staring straight into him. "Keep the lamps on," he shouted. "It hates light. The power cells are empty." Tor yelled back, "Then we make new ones." Eli sprinted to the wreckage, ripping open a panel and connecting the spare fusion cells directly to the lamp circuit. Sparks exploded, but the lamps flared to life again, blindingly bright. The creature recoiled, hissing in a voice that wasn't sound but vibration, shaking the air around them. Vec stumbled back. "It retreats." "Not for long," Eli said, panting. "It's learning. Next time, the light won't be enough." When the creature finally slipped back into the mist, the camp was silent again except for the soft hum of the lamps. Everyone stood frozen, staring into the darkness as if afraid it might come back. Silik was the first to speak. "We cannot stay here." Ranieri turned to Eli. "What do we do?" He wiped sweat and grime from his forehead, mind racing. "It feeds on energy, on anything electrical. That's why the fleet died. Why our lights fade. It's drawn to power like a moth to flame." Vec hissed. "Then every time you turn on the light, you call it to us." Eli pointed at him. "And without light, it comes anyway." "We can't hide." But maybe Ranieri frowned. "Trap something that devours energy." "Yeah," Eli said slowly, a crazy idea forming. "If it wants energy, we give it more than it can handle." The others stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Silik clacked his mandibles. "You intend to feed the darkness?" Eli grinned weakly. "No. I intend to make it choke." He grabbed a piece of metal and started sketching rough lines in the dust, a crude diagram of circuits and conduits. "We take the ship's reactor core and overload it. Build a pulse trap. When it comes close, it drains power and the surge hits it with everything we've got." Vec shook his head. "That would destroy us all." "Maybe," Eli said, voice calm. "But if we do nothing, it'll eat us anyway." "I'd rather." Gory's eyes softened. "You humans truly are mad." He smiled. "Yeah, that's our charm." They argued for a long time, but in the end the decision was clear. The creature would come again, stronger and faster. They had no other choice but to fight. The next day Eli led them through the plan. They would wire the reactor to release a surge powerful enough to fry anything within 50 meters, including themselves if it went wrong. The Draz brothers handled the heavy lifting. Silik set up motion sensors and Ranieri calibrated the circuits. For the first time, Eli noticed something strange in the way they moved. The aliens no longer looked at him with distrust. They looked at him for direction. That night, when they gathered around the flickering lamps, the fear that once filled their eyes was replaced with something different. Hope. Eli sat beside the power core, tightening the last coupling. His hands were blistered, his eyes bloodshot. Ranieri approached quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "When this is done," she said softly, "and if we survive, I will tell my people that humans are not chaos." He looked up, smiling tiredly. "What will you tell them we are?" She paused. "Fire. Dangerous but warm." Eli nodded. "I'll take that." In the distance, thunder rolled across the dead plain. Not from weather, but from something stirring in the dark. The creature was coming back, and this time humanity would be ready. The next morning came without sunrise. The sky stayed black, like ink spread across glass. The darkness above seemed heavier now, pressing down on the moon's surface as if it knew what the survivors were planning. Eli stood beside the broken ship, staring at the reactor chamber they had uncovered. The metal around it was twisted and charred, but the heart of the engine, the fusion core, still glowed faintly, pulsing like a sleeping heartbeat. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and their only hope. Ranieri joined him, her breath visible in the cold air. "It feels alive," she said quietly. Eli nodded. "It is. This core has enough power to light up a city, or turn this crater into a second sun." Vec approached, dragging a cable coil over his shoulder. If we fail, it will not matter which it becomes. Eli gave a crooked smile. That's the spirit. They worked without rest. Eli directed the repairs, shouting instructions through the wind that whistled across the rocks. Renari rewired the power conduits with her precise hands, her glowing crest shifting from blue to white as she focused. Silac crawled through narrow ducts connecting sensor nodes and setting up the energy pulse network. The Draz brothers positioned the lamp towers in a wide circle, their sharp claws hammering the panels into the rock. By nightfall, the camp looked less like a crash site and more like a desperate fortress. Eli wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of dust. We're almost ready. Once the sensors detect movement, the pulse will trigger automatically. Silac clicked. And if it approaches before the charge completes, Eli looked at the reactor, then at his wrist panel. Then someone will have to trigger it manually. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone understood what that meant. Tor was the first to speak. You humans have a strange habit of throwing yourselves at death. Eli shrugged. It's worked so far. Renari turned toward him, her voice firm. No one dies alone here. If this plan fails, we fall together. He looked at her, her alien features lit by the dim blue of the lamps, and for a moment she didn't look so different from him. Just another soul trying to live one more day, he nodded. Then let's make sure we don't fall at all. They took turns resting while Ellie ran diagnostics on the system. Every hum, every flicker of power felt personal now. The reactor was old, the circuits unstable. One wrong surge, and it would blow before they could even bait the creature close. But he kept adjusting, fine-tuning, whispering small prayers to machines the way only engineers do. Renari watched him from the edge of the ship. You talked to the machinist. He smiled faintly. Yeah, humans do that, makes us feel less alone. She tilted her head. Do the machines answer? Eli thought for a second. Sometimes, not with words. But when it works, it's like it's saying, I've got you. For the first time, Renari laughed. A quiet, musical sound. Your species is stranger than the stars. Maybe that's why the stars keep trying to kill us, he said. That night, as the others slept in shifts, Eli sat alone beside the reactor. He looked up at the black sky. Not one star shone back. The silence of space felt thick, almost alive. He thought of Earth, though he had left it years ago. The blue oceans, the smell of rain, the sound of city lights humming through the night. He wondered if any of it still existed. He whispered to himself, if this works, maybe someone out there will see light again. When dawn, or what passed for it, came, he woke the others. They gathered around the central console, checking readings one last time. The pulse will release once the core reaches 75% charge, Eli explained. That's the sweet spot, strong enough to blow, but not enough to vaporize us instantly. Vec grunted, comforting. Salak's antenna twitched. Movement far side of the ridge. It stirs again. Eli's heart pounded. Positions, everyone. Stay quiet, wait for my signal. They spread out around the camp, weapons ready. The air grew colder, the ground trembling softly. The lights flickered just once. Then came the sound, that low humming vibration crawling through their bones. Renari whispered, it's close. Eli checked the charge levels, 61%. Almost there, the shadows began to crawl over the rocks like liquid night. The lamps dimmed one by one, devoured by the invisible pull. The creature's shape began to emerge again. Massive, rippling, its form changing every second like smoke trapped inside glass. Eli could feel its pull through his chest, a pressure that made his vision blur. His suit's readings spiked. The creature was draining everything. Hold! He shouted. Don't move. Renari held her ground beside the power relay, her hands glowing faintly as she stabilized the circuit. The Draz brothers aimed their rifles, firing bursts of plasma to distract the creature from the core. Silac scurried across the rocks, checking the sensor cables, his movements frantic but precise. The reactor climbed to 73%. Almost there, Eli whispered. The creature suddenly lunged forward. A wave of darkness washed over the camp, slamming into them like a storm. The lamps shattered, sparks flying in every direction. Tor screamed as he was thrown backward, his armor flickering with static. Eli's console beeped, 75% reached. Now he yelled. Nothing happened. The trigger light stayed dark. The main relays fried. Renari shouted over the roar. The surge won't activate. Eli's blood ran cold. The automatic system was dead and the manual control was inside the reactor chamber itself. He looked toward it, 20 meters away, surrounded by the spreading shadow. Stay here, he said, voice calm but final. Vec grabbed his arm. You'll die before you reach it? Then I'll die moving forward, Eli said simply. That's how humans work. He broke free and ran. The darkness clawed at him, pulling at his limbs, whispering through his mind in broken echoes. Hunger, light, life. He pushed through it, step by step, until he reached the reactor chamber. Sparks burned across his arms. The panel glowed red, overheating. He slammed his hand down on the manual release. "Come on," he muttered. "Talk to me, sweetheart. I need you." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the lights inside the reactor flared, bright, blinding white. Eli turned toward the others and shouted, "Get down." The pulse exploded outward, a shockwave of pure light tearing through the darkness. The creature screamed. Not with sound, but with the tearing vibration of reality itself. Its body twisted, shattering into fragments of black dust that evaporated into nothing. The explosion knocked Eli backward. He hit the ground hard, his visor cracking. But he was alive long enough to see the sky, and for the first time since the attack, faint stars flickered above. Then everything went quiet. When the light faded, the others rose slowly, dazed but alive. The air smelled of ozone and metal. The shadows were gone. Runnery ran to the reactor, calling his name. "Eli, answer me!" She found him lying against the rocks, half buried in dust, his hand still resting on the control panel. His breathing was shallow but steady. His lips curved in a faint, tired smile. "Did it work?" he whispered. Runnery looked up at the sky. The stars shimmered faintly through the thinning veil. "Yes, you did it." He exhaled, relief washing over his face. "Then I guess the universe isn't done with us yet." Runnery touched his shoulder gently. "Rest, human. You have earned it." As he drifted into unconsciousness, she stayed beside him, watching the first faint glimmers of starlight return to the sky, small, fragile, and impossibly beautiful. Human light, she thought, born from chaos, fed by courage, and somehow still shining. When Eli opened his eyes again, everything was quiet. Not the dead, suffocating quiet from before. This was different, softer. Alive, he lay inside the ship's medbay, wrapped in layers of thermal blankets. A dull ache spread through his chest, and his left arm felt heavy, like stone. The ceiling above him was patched with metal plates and alien materials fused together in a strange mosaic. Someone had been busy. Renari's voice came from nearby. "You're awake." He turned his head slowly. She stood at the foot of his bed, her pale blue skin glowing faintly in the low light. Her crest flickered from white to soft green. A color Eli had learned meant relief. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice dry. "2 cycles," she said. "We thought you wouldn't wake. But your body refused to stop fighting." Eli chuckled weakly. "Yeah, we're stubborn like that." Renari tilted her head, the corner of her mouth curling slightly, something like a smile. "Your plan worked. The creature is gone. The sky cleared 2 nights ago. We can see the stars again." He turned his head toward the small viewport, and there they were, faint, distant points of light. He couldn't tell which stars they were, but they were enough. After so much darkness, just seeing them felt like breathing again. "That's good," he whispered. "Means we're not forgotten." Vec entered then, carrying a bundle of metallic scrap. "Our human engineer lives," he grunted. "Good. We still need you." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Ready?" "I just woke up." Vec dropped the bundle beside his bed. "If you can talk, you can work. The comm relay is damaged. You built the trap. You fix this." Uranari shot him a look, but Eli laughed softly. "Fine, fine. Give me an hour." His arm was stiff, his muscles weak, but his mind was sharp as ever. Together they reassembled the communications relay from the wreckage, fusing human wiring with alien crystalline nodes. Sparks flew, and several times Renari hissed at him for being reckless. He only smiled and said, "If it doesn't scare you, it's not working hard enough." Finally the console lit up. A faint pulse flickered on the display, an emergency beacon bouncing off nearby systems. Renari stared at it with wide eyes. "Someone might hear us." "They will," Eli said. "Humans are terrible at giving up. Someone's always listening." They stood there for a long moment, watching the soft pulse blink across the dark horizon. Later, when the cold winds quieted, they gathered outside the ship. The survivors, 7 of them now, sat around a small fire made from melted ship plating and emergency fuel. It gave off a faint blue glow that danced against the rock. Silac passed around ration packs, clicking cheerfully. "Food tastes better when you aren't dying." Vec grunted in agreement. "I will not argue." Eli smiled, chewing on a tough strip of dried nutrient paste. "I've eaten worse. At least this one doesn't try to crawl away." Renari sat across from him. Her eyes reflected the firelight. "I have been thinking about your people," she said quietly. "You are unpredictable. You build things that should not work. You throw yourselves into death and somehow walk back. I do not understand it." Eli shrugged. "Most of the time, neither do we." She leaned forward slightly. "When the fleet fell, when the stars went silent, the others froze. They waited for orders, for logic to save them. But you ran straight into the dark. Why? He looked into the flames for a long time before answering. Because someone has to. When everything stops making sense, humans move. We don't wait for a perfect plan. We make one out of whatever we've got. Junk, scraps, fear. Doesn't matter. We just keep moving. Runnery considered that. And if you fail, then we fail trying, he said simply. But at least the universe will know we didn't go quiet. No one spoke for a while after that. The fire crackled softly, and the stars above shimmered brighter now. Hundreds of them, peeking through the thin clouds of dust. Silac broke the silence. Do you think it's gone forever? The creature. Eli stared at the sky. I don't know. Maybe it's still out there sleeping. Maybe there are more. But now someone knows how to fight back. Vec let out a low hum. Then perhaps this war is not lost. Maybe not, Eli said. But we'll need to be smarter. And crazier. Ranari gave him a small, thoughtful look. Then we will need more humans. He smiled at that. You might regret saying that one day. The next morning, the beacon finally received a reply. A faint human voice. Broken by static. This is rescue ship Aurora responding to unknown distress signal. Identify yourself. Eli jumped to his feet, heart pounding. This is Eli Cross of the Joint Fleet. Survivors on Moon Theta 9. We're alive. We're. The signal cracked, faded, then returned stronger. Copy that. Hold position. We're coming. Cheers erupted through the camp. Even Vec's hard expression softened. Rennery looked at Eli and said, You see, someone was listening. He laughed, exhaustion and relief mixing in his voice. Told you. Humans don't let go. Hours later, the sky above them brightened as a sleek ship descended through the thin clouds. Its hull bore both human and alien insignias. A new alliance forged from the ashes of the one that fell. As the ramp opened and rescuers stepped out, Eli turned back one last time to the crater. The place where the dark had tried to swallow them. The reactor still glowed faintly beneath the surface, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. He whispered, You did good, old girl. Rary joined him, watching the light fade. What now? Eli looked up at the stars. Now we go home, then we build bigger ships. Brighter lights, and we make sure the stars never go silent again. As they boarded the rescue craft, the moon fell behind them. A quiet scar in the black sea of space. But above it, the stars burned bright once more, their light stretching across the void like promises waiting to be kept. And somewhere deep in that endless dark, the universe itself seemed to whisper, the humans are still here. Still fighting, still shining, still human.